So here we have another really dark and mysterious theory that if you really kind of think about it, it sounds like it makes a lot of sense. And it kind of gets even scarier the more you think about it. So this one was kind of brought to my attention recently as I was reading into something else. And then it kind of just led me somewhere else. And I started thinking, wow, this might actually be true. So here it goes. So as far as Pokemon theories go, we discussed the other day where some Pokemon have what are the gods of the Pokemon universe? And I mean, I think it's true without a doubt, all the legendary Pokemon are guardians of certain abilities. They all harness some kind of balance in the universe, even if humans don't really see it, So things are invisible, things that, you can't see that could exist right in front of you, like mythical creatures, for example. Parallel universes, other dimensions. You get the idea. There's more than what meets the eye, basically. So keep that in mind. So has anybody ever played Gen 8? And I mean, obviously a lot of people have, but anybody who's played Gen 8, there was one Pokemon that came to my attention that I forgot about, sort of, the power, because I didn't read its whole story. That Pokemon was Eternatus, or you had Eternatus? Yeah, Eternatus, I think is how you pronounce it. If you don't know, Eternatus was the dragon Pokemon that was the poison and the dragon type. And basically, the two main legendaries, I'm trying to remember what their names were, the ones that look like Rapido from Tales of Vesperia, the two dogs, the ones that were, one had the sword and the other one had the shield form. You obviously get the cover legendaries they had. Well, they sealed, the way the story went was a long time ago, they actually fought Eternatus together. And they actually beat Eternatus. Eternatus was weakened, and its energy cells basically leaked out into the world. And something about, Rose was a character that later on would eventually open up his own corporation that literally founded, they found a way to the two gimmicks with Gen 8 was that you could Giga evolve your Pokemon, and then I forget what the other one was. They both ended in the word Max, though. One of them was Dynamax and the other one was Gigamoss or something like that. I have to double check the spelling, but just bear with me here. So there was this theory and then I was reading about this earlier, where they were basically stating that, if you don't know, Eternatus came from a meteorite about 20,000 years ago that crash landed on Earth. So it kind of got me thinking. It kind of reminded me of Chrono Trigger, where Lavos comes out of the Earth's core, when it awakens. And but here's the thing, though. As far as Eternatus goes, it wasn't fighting somebody when it woke up. It was just sealed away inside of a meteorite. And then as erosions occurred, it eventually woke up, and it eventually kind of found its way back into the Earth. So it was on the planet Earth at one point in time. And the Pokemon obviously wasn't from Earth. It was from somewhere far, far away, maybe somewhere in the same galaxy. But here's where it gets interesting, though. So we know, based on the science that they were conducting, that Gigamoss was actually, or not Gigamoss, what was it? The Eternatus. The energy particles that it possessed caused some kind of weird evolutions that caused their Pokemon to get really huge, and not only that, but that had the ability to control different sizable, because the particles it was leaking into the atmosphere. So, but here's where it gets strange, though, if you really think about it. There's another Pokemon that we've known about before ever since Gen 3 that came from a meteorite, but it was always fighting Rayquaza. Again, Deoxys, for example. And I didn't really think about it like this until recently, but is it possible that Deoxys was also sort of related to Eternatus as far as their powers go? But and to back it up even further, what if their origins are not only connected, and the proof actually lies within the fact that maybe they came from the same alien race? You think about it. So if Eternatus is a Pokemon that had the ability to time travel through space, because it had the power of like genetics and all that, because that's basically what we're talking about here. The particles that they have, the physical appearance, and it has the ability to somehow create ripples and evolution and all that. And Deoxys was a Pokemon that was purely made by a genetic experiment gone wrong, and ever since the day we haven't really had any proof where Deoxys came from, what alien race created it. It's just a science experiment that escaped the lab sort of and somehow found its way on Earth. But Deoxys doesn't even remember where it came from. All that it knows is that it's a powerful entity and it has the ability to want to, it wants to know for itself who it is. And, Deoxys comes off as like a very fierce Pokemon because it's determined to find out and fight for its own survival, like what it's capable of doing. Deoxys is a Pokemon that it's a psychic type, and it can change with meteorite. Again, it has the ability to change forms based on reactions to radiation. Again, radiations from like meteorites and all that. Again, change Deoxys's forms. So is it possible that the genetics that the Pokemon give off, these Pokemon are special Pokemon. They're both legendaries. I don't know if they're mythical legendaries, but is it possible that not only are Deoxys and Eternatus the same in a way, but like did they come from like the same alien race that actually had the same effects on evolution? So they basically were gods that, from an advanced standpoint, that created Pokemon. And what other Pokemon could they have created? And they just sent it out into the unknown somewhere, waiting to be discovered. Deoxys and Eternatus could travel through time and space, while not like Palkia and Dialga, while being the masters of time and space. And of course, like Arcturus and maybe Giratina, if you want to say Giratina has the ability to. If what they're saying is true, that Giratina is the Satan of the Pokemon universe, how much more stronger is Giratina? Again, getting into like the deities and the powers they possess and whatnot. I would like to say those are probably the most powerful Pokemon that we know of, because they are basically the alphas that we see. But but Giratina is it's like 3 against 1 with Giratina. Palkia and Dialga are like Arcturus's left and right wingman. So how does Giratina farce against 3 of the most powerful legendaries in the world? Because Arcturus could easily take out Giratina very easily just by changing its type in a favor of its own. Like give it an ice plate and Giratina's already dead. Or a psychic type and judgment occurs on it because it changes its powers and its type advantage, and therefore gives it a stab bonus. But but basically it's kind of interesting to think about, because who is this alien race then that we don't see, and where did they come from? Is it possible that they know about the human race and they're just, they're creating like some sort of like not just alien race, but they're creating genetic experiments that would otherwise alter like some kind of creation, and it creates some sort of progress that the creations later find themselves in the universe, rather, that is it fars out as. So I think it's possible that the Pokemon themselves, as well as the creation of science, because again, like Latin term means to seek knowledge, they are basically finding a way to create like a ripple effect, as said before, and the Pokemon would eventually find their way. They would eventually find out that they're leading on to like other locations in the universe, like other planets, because again, when you have a Pokemon that can time travel, or travel through time and space, it basically would, what's their other correlation with the universe, because what is it? Eternatus was a Pokemon that they were causing different types of evolutions and causing different types of genetic physical alterations in the universe, causing things to change their physical appearance. So it's basically helping the universe basically grow in a way, grow in a different perspective, creating different types of genetics that would alter mutations, and therefore you could create offsprings and you could alter something into something else, a genetic change rather. Kind of like potential, kinetic and potential energy, but rather than giving off energy, it was basically just, it's like a chemical and a physical change versus like, you know, in science where it basically talked about like, you know, you're changing the genetics of something without alternating its properties, but instead you're alternating its properties and getting some different results. And therefore, it might very well actually make a bigger difference as far as like some of the Pokemon that aren't perfect. Like you got a Pokemon that only survives in the cold. Well, you know, maybe we can alter that so its blood type is cold and its body temperature doesn't need to be what it is, so that way it could live in the cold and the warm, you know, so hot and cold basically. Or maybe they have the ability to create Pokemon that were able to, without changing their genetics, they found a way to create, like take like a Cyndaquil, for example. Maybe they found a way to change Cyndaquil's typing advantage, you know, so Cyndaquil is no longer a fire type. Maybe it could be a water, an ice, or a grass type somehow. I know that sounds kind of funny, but you know, it's, you know, because once you start, you know, because that's something to think about. You know, if you're a god basically of some kind, you excel in knowledge, power, and this stuff doesn't seem impossible. You know, to us it does, because it's like, how does that even make sense? But if you're an advanced alien species that has the ability to like understand how the foundation of the building blocks work, and you have Pokemon like, and let's say they're created by some kind of, and let's say that Eternatus is actually a mutated Pokemon, kind of like Deoxys, that was created through some sort of genetics, again, DNA in this case, whether it was from Arcturus or, again, this alien civilization, and assuming that they are similar, where are they located at? Where did they come from originally? And how and the fact they landed on Earth, where could they have originally have been from those years ago? Something really interesting to think about. And is it the same Gigamoss? Could Eternatus have been the same Eternatus that we have seen? Eternatus? Or yeah. Could that have been the same Eternatus? Yeah. It's I'm just trying to remember how to spell it. It's Eternatus. Yeah. But anyways, so yeah, it's interesting to think about because, you know, what other Pokemon could do that? Sort of. A poison and a dragon type. Some people say, well, why isn't a psychic and a dragon type? And it's probably because we've already seen a lot of psychic and dragon types. You know, again, you have Latios and Latias. They were psychic and dragon types. You also had, I think there was a couple other ones too. I was trying to think of Polypole, but no, that was a poison and a dragon type, wasn't he? When he evolved into, what was that Pokemon? The giant stinger bee. Its shiny form literally looked like a cool bee drill, like sort of, but it was an ultra beast. What was that Pokemon called? I can't remember. But anyways, but yeah, that's probably it for that. But you know, whatever Pokemon those were and wherever they went from there, it's interesting to think that it could very well have led. They could lead themselves to like other planets, and they could have. It kind of like Necrozoma, like when it travels through time and space in its light form, it eats light. But it also gives birth to like some kind of, like it creates like different things too. Like, you know, that was what was really cool about the Ultra Beasts. They were like an antimatter sort of like consumable energy. Like, because again, you like think of it like Guzzlord. Guzzlord like eats universes literally. It's like a parody of Galactica from like the X-Men and all that, you know, Marvel Comics. And they were basically saying that like Galactica was like, to the mortals, Galactica was basically like a devil god. They thought like he's gonna eat the earth and there's like only one way. And like Silver Surfer was always like trying to warn them like, hey, you know, this guy's coming here, you know, what do we do, you know? But it was like, but at the same time though, Galactica was, you know, he wasn't always a bad guy. Come to find out, Galactica was just like, it was kind of like a neutral force. You know, he came from another universe, and he was basically trying to tell people that, you know, he didn't really know who he was. He was like to him, he was like one of the last survivors of his own species. and he was trying to figure out like where the rest of them were at, you know, the original founders of the creators and all that, like the Council of Creators or whatever it was called. Like each one of them hailed from like a different universe, but they all met up somewhere, you know. But it was, and it kind of makes me think, you know, maybe it's like the same thing with the way the universe worked in this case. You know, like you got Arcturus that created one universe, and maybe it created another one. But like, you know, where did its parents come from? And then you have like these other alien races that we don't know about, that their evidence is definitely there. There's Pokemon like, again, like Eternatus, for example, where it was, it created a bunch of, it probably went to like different locations throughout the universe that it was originally from, and it created ripple effects within those planets. And as it traversed those molecular structures, because again, energy can't be destroyed, it can only be multiplied, and therefore they created different areas, and then over time those Pokemon eventually evolved, became what they did, and so it found its way, or even crazier, like it landed on Earth 20,000 years ago, and then it eventually found its way into like, you know, it found its way into that planet, but it was, you know, and because it leaked all of its particles back into the, you know, the atmosphere, it was causing, you know, once people found a way to harness this newly found type of energy, it caused all sorts of radioactive and, you know, different types of evolutions that affected other things around it. So it created like an effect on an ecosystem, and it created an effect on an environment as well, and therefore it caused all sorts of crazy physical and chemical changes to like said Pokemon, or even all together. So it's interesting to think, because if Deoxys is able to, you know, Deoxys for the most part didn't really have that kind of power. It only but on itself it did though. So if they're created, if Diomex and Deoxys are anything to take from each other, they were created through like some kind of experimentation, and if that is true, then they very well not only share a lot of similarities, even though their type advantages would be completely different, because Deoxys is a psychic and a genetics Pokemon, but at the same time, the Eternatus has the ability to like live forever, and as long as that is the case, it's able to share that kind of power in its own way, causing like, again, different types of radiation that cause some sort of radioactive, well, it can cause like physical appearances that could alter like a Pokemon's physical genetics rather. So whether the Pokemon breed and then they have like their own appearance, it also causes some Pokemon to, as far as where they can evolve or they can de-evolve into something else. But it's interesting to think about how to really make sense of all this. You know, we have Pokemon that can mega evolve through like certain evolutions and strange stones. Then you got Pokemon that can, you know, their genetics get stronger, and as well as their HP and all that. So their stats get infected too. And then you have something like for example, you'd also have like viruses like Pokerus, for example, that actually makes like breeding or effort values double and all that. So it's not a bad virus, it's just something that actually helps the Pokemon get stronger. And so it's interesting to think that, you know, legendary Pokemon actually have an effect on the ecosystem, and that's what happened in this case. So if there's a bunch of viruses and cell mutations that are being created through physical organisms, then the Pokemon themselves are just oversized parasites that are basically capable, or basically a virus, a bacteria that are creating like an ecosystem inside of an ecosystem, basically. And so again, really the big question here is, even though again there's a lot of repeats here, I know, but think about it though. You know, what alien race created Deoxys and Eternatus? And if Eternatus and Deoxys do share one thing in common, and there is evidence of it, it's the particles that they represent, the colors, they represent, they came from meteorites that crash landed on Earth. So chances are they might not, maybe if they're not from the same planet, they're from the same universe rather, the same galaxy perhaps. I find it very unlikely that Deoxys, you know, because they were in meteorites, so they had to have been like near an asteroid belt. They got pushed out, landed on Earth. And again, if you don't know, you know, asteroids hit planets all the time, so it's not uncommon. And so the one that was closest to Earth could have been like from Mars, for example, or the video game from Mars. The universe of where Pokemon takes place, it could take place from like the game's version of Mars, where like it's a nearby planet and it, you know, crash landed on Earth, came flying right out of its its asteroid belt and landed somewhere in Earth. And but at the same time though, you know, it kind of like, if we're taking Mystery Dungeon logic seriously, it's because there was a meteorite that was going to crash land on Earth, but the Rayquaza caught it just in time and destroyed it. A piece of it went flying off, landed somewhere else because it was still close to the. It's what is known as a break-off effect. You know, Rayquaza hit it with a hyper beam, destroyed it, but like it burst into a couple of other pieces, and a couple of those pieces hit Earth. One of those pieces actually had the triangle meteorite where Deoxys came from. The second it awakened it and it activated it, and it was on Birth Island. So if we're taking anything away from this, there are Pokemon that very well can be examined, and Deoxys obviously being an extraterrestrial Pokemon and even more mysterious than, you know, maybe not as mysterious as Mew, let's be honest, because Mew was, you know, another Pokemon that's been like around for a very long time, but very rarely, most people have ever even seen it. You know, Deoxys would be a Pokemon that like nobody had ever seen it because it was never from Earth and nobody ever left, and the inhabitants of Earth never left Earth to begin with. So what Pokemon, what planet was Deoxys from, and did they create Deoxys in its own image? I think Galactica could have, or not Galactica, Eternatus could have been created at the same time though, sort of in the same way. So that is to say, like the Pokemon that we see, they very well could be immortal, sort of, as far, I mean, even though you technically can still beat them, and they still have their own weaknesses, I do believe that these Pokemon can still, they can die, but they can get reborn somehow, you know, like as like their souls, for example, like soul genetics. What is it? Eternatus probably would have, it kind of makes sense that Eternatus would probably have like a longer lifespan than that of like Deoxys, for example. But then again, you know, these life sources, they're all running on energy particles that don't give out as easily. So their lifespan could very well be a lot more stronger than, like, let's say something like Deoxys versus Eternatus. I think Eternatus would probably have a better chance of like creating its own immortality, because like it says, it has the ability to draw in its own particles, and if those particles are what give off its own life source, and it can create storms, like it can get super strong basically. So I think Eternatus very well could have been like what was known as like a super experiment they were conducting, and then it got so strong that maybe they just decided that they probably did a very good job with the test results and all that, and they probably just released it. Like they figured, well, you know, we'll see what Eternatus has to do for the galaxy, and so they released it into the universe, and Eternatus found its way somewhere on Earth, and you know, but again, you know, I wouldn't be surprised if the Pokemon were created by advanced beings, and this is even before we consider them getting involved with like the gods of the Pokemon, like Deoxys and, or like the higher ups like Arcturus, Dialga, Palkia, where they could have been at, that's another story. But as far as the Pokemon universe goes, I do believe that there's a lot more out there waiting to be discovered, and a lot of those that are operating, think of it like a secret society. You know, we know there's a lot of things out there that aren't answered, and they just exist. Like but they don't touch anything. They only influence, insinuate, and reactivate things. Only suggest, influence, insinuate. Basically, one hand washes the other. And it's kind of like the same thing with Pokemon. All legendaries have their own roles. Sometimes they get involved, and sometimes they probably don't. But it's kind of like, that's what's kind of scary, because like some of the Pokemon, they do watch over the universe, but like at the same time though, they just don't get involved unless they really have to. So they know, but they might be doing something else at the time. And so it's something to think about, because, you know, as far as Pokemon goes, maybe it's not always just about Pokemon battles and and seeing where your favorite Pokemon lives, it could very well just exist in a Pokemon world where it's just, doing its own thing and making progress, but what disturbs the balance at one point? What tips the balance, and then something else has to get involved somehow, and you have to, like the gods of destruction from Dragon Ball, for example, like they just go on their, like Lord Beerus. That was the one I was trying to think of the other day, because he always looked like Mewtwo, like, he never really fought anybody, but his powers were so strong that, people were scared of him. Like like the second he showed up and people knew who he was, they're like, why is he here? What does he want? And then it was like the same thing with like the Ami gods and all that. The one that could destroy a universe just like that. And they were wondering, well, wait a minute, what does he want? Why is he here? And it's like the same thing with Pokemon, If they can create it, they can destroy it. But it's like they probably won't destroy it because it was their creations, in the story, the lore. So we'll never see like Arcturus like destroy the same Pokemon universe that it probably very well created, and all of its individuals that are with it, because it probably loves what it created somehow. It's just trying to figure out like how can it better what it has created, because even Arcturus and like Palkia and Dialga, as strong as they are, even they're not perfect. But they're more perfect than the mortals are any day of the week. So I think that's probably a good way to put it, like, you got all these Pokemon that they create a balance in the universe, but at the same time though, they create like it's a tipping point rather, where they only get involved unless they have to, and they just keep an eye on ways to probably look for progress and just move on from it. How can they keep going on, and what can they keep doing? What else? So basically, what else have we not discovered, and what has yet to be, and what does it all mean in the end? Again, progress rather. So that's what I think. I think I wouldn't be surprised if Eternatus and Deoxys were somehow connected. What other eternal Pokemon are out there that we don't know about that could have landed on Pokemon? Again, if you want some other Pokemon that came from space that we know of, well, like, again, some of my favorites were like Solrock, especially Lunatone. I always love Lunatone, not only because it's like a crescent rock, but it literally does look like a crescent moon. It is a moon Pokemon that literally... It came from space, they came from space, and they're just like, they levitate right off the ground, and I tell you what, I just wish I could pet one. I guess I'd give one a big giant hug. He'd give me a cosmic hug. But yeah, some Pokemon, they're really adorable. They really are. You never know what you're gonna run into and what they're capable of doing. But yeah, like, so yeah, if you're not already subscribed, please subscribe. Have a nice day. I'll be making more videos when I find more stuff. But again, this is very interesting stuff. I think what's really interesting right now is there's a lot of Pokemon theories that maybe the ones that we really should be asking ourselves are the ones that are beyond the planets. Like, again, like the Ultra Beasts, where they're like from other dimensions, not just from planet Earth. Like, what other Pokemon... Because I do believe this. In the Pokemon universe, again, like Satoshi Tajiri stated, they were all ideas that they created that were based on some kind of golden rule. Like, it was like it had to make sense. So if Pokemon is, like, that's the name of the species of the creatures that exist, then that is in fact proof right there that there could be an infinite number of species that are waiting to be discovered that exist right now still, somewhere out there in the Pokemon universe. So basically what that means is first of all, we're going to need more Pokemon that have the ability to, you can travel through time, like Celebi, for example, or hell, if you had a Dialga, that would be even better, but it'd be like, imagine you traveling to like other dimensions, other universes, and of course you're still alive too, you're not dead in the process. But like, you could traverse to another dimension and see like all these species for yourself that you never thought you'd ever see, because they were just somewhere else that you couldn't just get up and walk to, you know. Then you had to like travel through time and space to get there, you know. Again, like Cosmog or Luna La or Sol Galileo, where they could travel through time and space, and you could go to through those little wormholes, and they'd end up in like another beautiful part of the galaxy or universe, and then all of a sudden you're like, you know, another planet that looks just very beautiful and majestic.